TEA Commissioner Mike Morath, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we heard the UNT president just say that there is a crisis in college preparation. And I'm wondering, how bad is it? He didn't lay out a very positive picture at all about students coming to college and being prepared.
Mm-hmm. The unfortunate truth is that the disruptions to public education due to the COVID-19 pandemic, not just in Texas, but really across the country, were pretty disastrous for educational attainment for our children. And we in Texas fared better than most states and have largely recovered in the reading and writing skills, English language arts skills of our children. But in mathematics proficiency, we have not recovered. Mathematics is so much the language of both higher educational attainment and career that the lack of proficiency in mathematics is really holding a lot of students back. And that's what he, as a university president, is of course seeing freshmen come in who have an inadequate background in mathematics and are therefore doing quite poorly in college math classes.
I remember you said during testimony, I think it was before the state senate recently, and you talked specifically about the math problem, and that, if I remember correctly, a lot of it goes back to third grade math, multiplication tables, division tables, students not learning it then, and that trips them up for years to come. Is that right?
Yeah, math as a discipline, as an academic discipline, is very linear. One building block builds up to the next building block, builds up to the next building block, builds up to the next. So what happens if you remove one of those building blocks? Maybe the student can continue for a while making academic progress, but eventually that hole becomes almost insurmountable. And these foundational mathematical skills, memorizing your times tables, if you didn't do that, then every single math problem for the rest of your life, you have to spend time thinking about the basic arithmetic in that math problem, which slows you down in trying to think about the rest of that math problem. And so this is why the effects of the pandemic are still lingering in mathematics, because kids lost access to good mathematics instruction for some period of time, and they have all these little holes that we still have not fully filled in. I see this not just as Commissioner of Education, but I'm also a dad. I have 4 young kids. My oldest is in 6th grade, which means my oldest was finishing 1st grade when the pandemic hit. And we still have her in mathematics tutoring because we have to overcome the gap. And she's a wonderful student. I'm blessed as a dad, but this is a real academic problem that our schools are attempting to remedy all over the state of Texas. It's just very difficult to fill in all cover all that lost ground.
As you know, Governor Abbott just announced last week that he's got the votes to pass school choice in the House. The Senate already passed it and will likely do so again. But I'm wondering, in your estimation, what are the benefits to school choice, and what is your biggest concern for public schools if school choice were to pass?
Well, I'll answer the question staying focused on the issue of mathematics in particular. Individual students may have specific mathematics gaps that are different from one child to the next. If we can give our parents options to take ownership of that and real tools to take ownership of that, then they can provide individualized supports to meet the needs of their specific children in ways that might not be possible in a normal traditional classroom full of kids. And so the idea of providing parents, who of course are a child's first teacher, these are parents' kids, not anybody else, and providing them with the most tools to support their children's educational attainment. This is an unequivocal good for our families. And as Commissioner of Education, I'm for good schools. I want more good schools, more available for more families, and I don't much quibble over who is running the school and how, as long as it's delivering for the children and families that attend it.
A lot of discussion about providing more funding for public schools in the next legislative session. And some people have called for an increase in the basic student allotment, not by a little, but by a lot. And also basing funding on enrollment as opposed to attendance. Do you agree with both of those?
Well, I can speak to the latter point. So Texas's school finance system funds our students based upon a combination of factors. It's a very a differentiated funding system meant to give more money to kids who need more resources in a very fair way. A part of that is funding kids based upon them showing up to school each day. The best evidence that we have is that is a remarkably beneficial policy for children because it ensures that the administrators of the school are concentrating on making kids show up to school every day, and that's how the school is funded. So we generally see the benefit of an attendance-based funding model being pretty significant. We think if you would switch to a model that is just, the kid shows up one day, you get the whole money for the whole year, bad things happen as a result of that. So no, I would not be in favor of switching away from attendance to enrollment because I think it ultimately is harmful for students. To your other question, your question about funding more broadly, the current level of K-12 funding in Texas public education is as high as it's ever been. The most recent legislative session, there was somewhere between $1 billion and $2 billion per year of additional funds given to our K-12 schools by the legislature. So the level of state and local funding in public schools in Texas is at an all-time high. The dilemma that I think our schools face is there was one-time money provided by the federal government, and it was an extraordinarily large amount of money, about $5 billion with a B per year, and that money is expiring. And so they're dealing with this cut made by the federal government, which is a real funding cut because they had that money temporarily and now it's gone. So I think schools in all over the state of Texas and really all over the country are wrestling with that drop, even though the legislature has consistently put more money into public education in terms of what the state legislature has done throughout this time period.
New money, though? I mean, because last time we saw the state picked up more of the tab using state funds as opposed to property tax revenue.
Yeah, you're talking about Senate Bill 2. So independent of Senate Bill 2. So because Senate Bill 2 did not change the level of total funding that schools did. It changed tax policy a little bit. But independent of that, there was the Tier 2 golden penny yield went up. There was additional money in for school safety and additional money for instructional materials. And the sum total of all of that was north of $1.5 billion of new money per year in the most recent legislative session.
And I wanted to ask you about teacher pay raises because that's a big issue. Do you believe the state legislature should set aside specific funding for school districts to give teachers a raise just as they did during the 2019 legislative session?
So the complexity of this is you have 1,200 independently governed school districts, and it is actually the local school board that controls how many teachers are employed and what their pay compensation system is. Here in North Texas, you have the example of the Dallas Independent School District that has a system of compensation raises so that the highest paid teachers in Dallas make actually more than $100,000 a year. That is a somewhat unusual compensation model in the state, but that is a decision that local school districts make. I'm a big fan of increasing pay for teachers, for as many teachers as we can, and also for rewarding our excellent teachers with higher and higher levels of pay so they can stay in classrooms longer and longer. And I would certainly advocate for that kind of support from the legislature, have previously.
School security. Should schools get more funding from the state to harden their schools? A lot of them complain that the funding that they got from the state doesn't add up to much at all.
Yeah, there was a pretty significant infusion of resources. There was some one-time money given to school districts to support, say, one-time facilities upgrades, and that was $1.5 billion in the last session. And then on top of that, about $150 million a year, I think, of annual money to support safety operational practices. I've talked to school leaders around the state, and there have been varying operational responses to that. In some cases, the new money was sufficient, given what the school district needed to do from a security personnel perspective. In other cases, it was not sufficient. And so I think this is a topic for the legislature to consider. Obviously, we want to make sure that our kids are safe every single day in schools, and so I would anticipate some attention to this issue by the legislature as it convenes.
Last question. Reports show that President-elect Donald Trump wants to eliminate the U.S. Department of Education. What do you think of that, and could that help or hurt Texas?
I mean, my job is really focused on the 5.5 million souls of Texas public schools, so I am really relentlessly and narrowly focused on Texas. I'm not sure I pay much attention to what happens outside of our borders, so I don't know that I have any perspective on that.
All right. TEA Commissioner Mike Morath, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.